Welcome to the Veritas Forum, engaging university students and faculty in discussions about life's hardest questions and the relevance of Jesus Christ to all of life.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to have you here. My name is Rick Gamble, and I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. And I just want to say on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for coming. When you hold something like this, you never know if you're going to get 300 people or 3 people or somewhere in between. And we have a nice group here today that I think will really help us facilitate some dialogue and some debate and some discussion. And it's wonderful that you saw fit to be able to share your insight and your experience tonight. So for that, we're grateful. Just want to give you one brief little introduction to think about. We're here, of course, tonight to talk about bridges, building bridges. And that's very important. I think we all know about the Golden Gate Bridge, that span between the San Francisco Harbor and the Pacific Ocean. You've seen that bridge many, many times in pictures and video. Did you know that when it was being built in the mid-30s, there were 23 men who fell to their death when they were building that span? And that's because it's an incredibly huge and very, very tall structure. So it wasn't surprising that there were those kinds of fatalities. The interesting thing is that after they got underway with the construction, they put in place this amazingly huge safety net. And after they put that in place, 23 other workers fell, but all of them, of course, were safe because of the net. What I find most interesting about that story is that productivity on that project zoomed ahead by 25%. Why? Simply because the men knew that it was safe, that they were going to be okay. I think tonight, as we build our bridge, respect is the safety net. We're here because we recognize there's great value in what's going on in the community, great value in the talent and the giftedness and the passion of these people. And so we're grateful for the opportunity to have you here as we share with them their work and their insight and their contribution to this community. Hopefully by the end of the night, we'll all see that we have a big role to play as we foster those ties and those bridges together. So thank you again for coming. We're now going to ask Marcia if she will introduce the key players tonight. So nicely done.
Good evening, everyone. So as Rick was talking tonight, it's about building bridges and how we build partnerships that allow persons of good conscience with different spiritual perspectives to work together for social justice. My job tonight is to introduce to you these 4 wonderful people. As I introduce them, I will ask you each to stand up if I am talking about you. And just give everybody a nice wave and say hi, because everybody's happy to see you. So we're going to start with this person. As a Brantford native, the first speaker has personal experience with the community and the social justice work within it. His lectures on empowerment and voice, advocacy, poverty and health, understanding communities and organizations, and children's social work have been heard at several Canadian universities. As the former National Director of Canada Without Poverty and the former coordinator of the Brant and Brantford Roundtable on Poverty, he has actively worked to serve the community of Brant to make it a better place. Recently, with his business partners, he created the Brant Advocate, a local publication that focuses on telling the stories of the region, including stories from social justice and religious perspectives. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Laurier. Also keep in mind, the order that I'm introducing these wonderful people are the order that they will be speaking in. So our second speaker was one of the early faculty members here at Laurier Brantford, and therefore has been with the university for quite some time. His current research, teaching, and outreach focuses on community service learning and how community revolves around food. The community service learning refers to developing spaces for students to engage progressively in community in all of its forms and to find ways and paths so that such engagement moves us in the direction of being engaged citizens, which is one of the foundational aspirations in Laurier's mission. His work in different communities is a privilege and a joy for him. He has established many bridges within the Laurier Brantford community itself, and we are pleased to have him here this evening. Please welcome Dr. Robert Fagan. our third speaker. As a regional HIV specialist, this speaker has gone global with her passion. She is the founder and director of the Maasai Center for Local, Regional, and Global Health, a provincially funded HIV and AIDS clinic in Guelph that today provides care to HIV patients in the Guelph, Wellington, Grey Bruce, and Waterloo regions. She is also the founder of Bracelet of Hope, an organization that raises awareness of the HIV/AIDS pandemic in sub-Saharan Africa. It also funds HIV/AIDS relief in Lesotho, Africa. The organization's latest focus is income-generating activities for the clinic in Lesotho, and also the development and support of foster homes for AIDS orphans and the creation of 2 new HIV and AIDS clinics in the country. The campaign's overall goal is to see a bracelet on the wrist of every Canadian and the end of the AIDS pandemic in Lesotho, accomplishing Millennium Development Goal number 6 in one country. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anne-Marie Zadlik. Last but certainly not least, in a world where the common question to situations is why, this speaker has asked why not. The founders of Why Not City Missions have been working with at-risk youth and the homeless population since 2002 and continue to use their organization to provide food and clothing to people in Brantford who are in need. The program offered by the organization fosters social development, personal growth, and empowerment of the homeless and at-risk youth, especially those engaging in destructive behavior, drug and alcohol addictions, homelessness, poverty, violence, and poor self-esteem. We are privileged to have him here tonight to talk about social justice on behalf of him and his wife. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Charlie Kopchik. The best of luck to all 4 of you tonight.
Door number 3. All right, Mark, perhaps we could hear from you first then, please.
Sure. I feel bad. I screwed up the start, which was just to stand up and sit down, but I'm going to try my best not to continue that trek. He's paid me to say this, but my chaplain, the Most Reverend Jonathan Massimi, wrote this in the Brand Advocate. Today we're talking about the truth about Jesus, and I've been told that it's very good to start off, no matter how serious your subject, to start off with a good icebreaker. So if I'm to look at the truth about Jesus, I have to tell you something, and it was the title of an Advocate article. The truth about Jesus is that he's Italian, and so am I. And so are you. And the proof of this, I'm going to read from the Most Reverend Jonathan Massimi. I can feel the free coffee later piling up. Basically, this is the intro to that article that we published. You probably read the title of this article and said, "What? Jesus is Italian? Before you dismiss this claim, allow me to state my case. First, his mother was named Mary, his father was named Joe. Second, he was a carpenter. Third, he made wine. Fourth, he lived at home until he was 30. Fifth, he hung out with the same 12 guys all the time. And sixth, his mother thought he was God. There you have it, case dismissed. Jesus is Italian, and so am I." So thank you for that, Rev. Mass. They want us to talk about a few things, partly how we became involved with social justice. And for me, actually, and a lot of folks don't know this, I think I first became involved during my confirmation. What I did for my confirmation, you have to do some community service. I actually became, I think, the youngest local person to teach Sunday school at Our Lady of Fatima Church. And that was interesting because I got to see somebody like Father Meme, who I don't know if many people here, I know 1 or 2 from the old neighborhood who would probably know who he was, who had to deal with certain issues. And you know, it's funny, it's like when you start a job somewhere and they let you behind the scenes a little bit. And I think that's what that experience was like, seeing how he would counsel folks after church, not just at church, and hearing some of their particular issues. You know, had issues myself, and that was really inspiring to see. Now, in a Catholic high school, I became a little bit more aware of social justice and the need for advocacy. But ironically, when I think a lot of students, a lot of young people, they learn more about social justice at a place like this. But when I went to university, I swear that skipped me almost completely. I still have the Noam Chomsky books and the Naomi Klein books. I said I read, but I didn't. I went to school at Ottawa U, and I didn't go to any of the protests. Luckily, the one thing that I did do that I think kind of helped me through this is I joined a debate club. And it's fascinating. We talked about building bridges today, and we talked about this. You talked about this, Rick, and you're very better than Steve Paikin intro that you gave us today. And one of the things that I think helps people build bridges is something like debate, and that might sound odd, but in a debate society at the university level, what you have to do is sometimes you have to defend a position that isn't yours, that isn't one you agree with. And what a good exercise that is, to take somebody else's position and really try to understand it and really try to take part in their point of view. And I think that's something that can help us as we move along trying to build bridges in community development, engagement, and social justice issues in all of our communities. So again, debating with smart people, debating on subjects that maybe that wasn't my personal opinion, it really took you away from that groupthink that a lot of folks have. And sometimes it's easy to have. People talk about how they hop on Twitter now and they read so much about all these different issues. Well, if you don't friend and follow people who you don't always agree with, you're just going to get a cacophony of the same voices as your own. And I don't think that really helps us understand where people are coming from. It's very difficult to kind of think outside that box and to look at folks with compassion and an understanding that they're not evil. They're not trying to disagree with you. They have their opinions, and the reason they have those opinions may be some valid reasons, and there's a discussion to have around that. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. So they also asked us what we do now. I do a few things. I wear a few hats. One of them is as a social worker. And it's so fascinating to me because a lot of my clients get so much out of the religious communities. They get a sense of community that is the non-tangible, because very, very often faith-based communities are sometimes the only groups that are doing the tangible. The housing that some won't do, the food that some won't do, the activities that some won't do. And you have to really respect that. And when I say faith-based communities, I mean all faith-based communities. If you look around this community, and instead of talking about myself, I'm going to highlight other folks in this community. I look at somebody like Rev Mass, who I know, because I've seen him in the morning, stays up at night worrying about how to affect change in a neighborhood that needs it. I think about people like Dave Carroll and Brian Beattie, who often in the Bryan Advocate write about the adventures and misadventures of a downtown frontline church. I think about people like Charlie and Sue, who I've had a really great experience when I've participated in activities at Why Not, or when I came to town. Oh, Robert, are you crying? Is that? So moving. Yeah, it is. Thank you. But I watch them, and they're going to tell their story. But if you've heard their story before, it's pretty amazing what a table and some free coffee and Joe Louis can turn into. I look at Reverend Randy McKenzie, who quietly one day let me know he once ran for office back in Saskatchewan under Tommy Douglas. And I watched him help organize his congregants in ways that, even though he's retired now, they still do. And in fact, they do just as much. And watching that sort of care for a community, to me, is very special. I look at my friends at the Salvation Army. I've had 4 years now where I've been participating with the Red Kettle campaign and with their food drives. And again, frontline work that a lot of the folks in the social work community refuse to do, right? And then also the Sikh community. I got this shirt at a Sikh community event. It says, "I pledge humanity." And this was after that tragedy in the States in the Sikh community, and the way they invite people from all walks of life, or nearly all walks of life, to participate in understanding. My friends in the Native community with Native spirituality, and how important that becomes for them, and trying to educate and advocate in sometimes very difficult times, especially in a very difficult community to do that in sometimes. And you start looking at these things, the Muslim community, and the LGBT community. I will be forever changed by a Pride Walk beforehand. Kathy Diltz, the Reverend at Heritage United, and Barry Pridham, who is an amazing Reverend. They had a non-denominational service before that Pride Walk, and to watch people from the LGBT, the lesbian, gay, bi, transgender community come to a church service, who church and religion and Jesus were a very important part of their lives, and for reasons of just being themselves, they felt that it was no longer available to them. And to be able to see them, tears streaming down their face as they are asked to come up and receive bread, right? Myself and my partner Rebecca, tears streaming down our face, and to see that sorrow and that, I guess, the word for it would be that ability to then work past that, turn into, actually by the end of it, we had about 70 people dancing in the aisles. You know, that is the religious community in this town. And it's so many different points of view, but they're all doing frontline work, and I think we need to honor that. So when you look at transformational people, we look at people like Martin Luther King, we look at Tommy Douglas in America and the US and Canada, and people sometimes forget those were reverends, right? Two of the most transformational people in our countries were reverends. So when we're looking at social justice, we really need to make sure we build bridges with religious and faith-based communities. And I think I went just a little over time, so thank you.
That is so cool. All I had to do was stand up and he knew, all right, I have to wind it up. So keep that in mind, Robert.
So don't start the clock yet. How much time do we have? I'm unclear.
10 minutes?
Because he's thinking an hour and a half. So.
I was told 7, so I got 2 more minutes anyway.
Well, let's see what happens here. Is this coming across okay? Okay. Thank you all, and thank you for that. When Peter asked me to come out, it was a couple of months ago or something like that, maybe even 6 months ago or so. Anyways, I began musing about what would seem appropriate to share with you here. And one of the first things I thought of as an academic is that I guess I need to wade back through the community development literature, the community university partnerships literature, and come up with some erudite comments and maybe a few quotes and sound like I know what I'm talking about. And then I thought better of this, and you guys are likely better off for that. Instead, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a kind of a narrative about how I got to this place. And I'm not going to talk about, as I just heard, the kinds of things that I'm doing right now. I think maybe that can come out in discussions later if that's useful. Anyways, a number of circuitous kind of meanderings which brought me to this table with this fabulous gang here tonight. I want to start though with a little bit of feedback from you guys. So this word bridging seems to be the concept we're using to pull ideas together. And without any sort of long-winded explanations and so on, I want single words from you guys. Words that fit for you what this bridging word means, what it means to you. Give me some stuff to work with there.
Serve.
Sorry, what? Serve?
Understanding.
Understanding.
Cooperation. Togetherness.
Okay, sorry, I heard cooperation and
Empathy.
empathy.
Tolerance.
Empathy, tolerance. There was another one up there.
Togetherness.
Connection.
That's even a word.
Love.
Togetherness. I'm going to go with it.
Accommodation.
Sir, accommodation. Is that 2 C's?
Love.
2 C's, 5 N's.
You know, I'm going to stop at love. That's a nice one.
No.
Works for me, whoever came up with that. Anyway, so thanks. So a number of these kinds of words in many ways intersect with the story I'm going to tell you about something that was really pivotal in my world as a young boy. And it was playing on the shores of a lake up in the Canadian Shield near Sault Ste. Marie, which is where my father's family came from. Beautiful little place where I spent most of my day catching toads and climbing trees and swimming and playing and making forts and wandering the forest and the kinds of things which to me speak of an ideal. And all of these kinds of things, in hindsight to me, told me about how beautiful all of these things are in their connection, in the ways that they form this world around me. I spent the next 30 or so years trying to figure out why humanity seemed to be so transfixed around trying to destroy it. It really moves me, it really hurts me. And it probably ties back in very closely to that kind of childhood I had, which was just so beautiful. So I spent 30 years in academic pursuits, trying to figure out what it is about deforestation and ruining our soils and dumping stuff in ever increasingly large piles of the garbage that we create, that humans create, of what we do to our oceans, or overfishing, of what we do to the air, the sort of things that we spew into the air, which we breathe, which to me is part of my creation, the stuff which connects me to the world. And then I spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out, so what do we do? How can I take a role in devising policies and coming up with regulations and ways of being and teaching and so on, which might help to move us in ways to behave in ways I consider to be more conscious, more sensitive, more responsible. A lot of time spent trying to find external means by which to get humanity to think more consciously about us as a species, interconnected with all of the other species and things which make up our planet, the thing which sustains us. And yet I grow increasingly frustrated and saddened. More and more I just see the incredible difficulties I see around us, societies around the world, and in some ways it's the northern world to me which seems to be the most, has the hardest time trying to come around to thinking differently about how we can live on this planet in a way which respects ourselves and all the other things which make up the world. And then about 10 years ago, something happened. Not something that's pivotal, and I didn't reach rapture, and none of that sort of stuff happened. But then there was some sort of a mist off in the distance which started to clear for me. And there were two kinds of things that emerged at that time. One was, I started in a very personal way to explore who I am. And I did this because I have two sons. And I want to be a good father. A kind of responsibility that seemed vital given my growing awareness about how much I missed my own father who died when I was 12. In some ways it was a kind of a consciousness, a piece of, like a shadow that moved out in front of me, which I was now finally aware of, given my circumstances of having two young boys that I want to bring up into the world in a responsible and beautiful and generous way. And I did this by working with an organization of men that I found that do this. They provide support and challenge and a place from which I can grow and explore and learn who I am. Long story short, with a deep sense of commitment from this organization of men, it helped me to understand what it means to be a good man, a good father, a good community member, a good partner. And the immense passion and joy that I get from knowing myself more cleanly and more clearly. The other one was, I started getting a sense that this environmental transformation that I want, that I seek, is deeply about people. It's all about people. And what we believe and think about ourselves. And that our attachments, our perspectives on the world and how we live in it are indelibly tied together. From here it became apparent that my role in a variety of ways is to help people see the beauty in themselves. In spite of perhaps the dominant messages we often get from elsewhere, telling us otherwise. So my belief is that from this place of a feeling of self-worth, of having value, of confidence and an emergent belief and awareness that I am a good person and a valuable person and that I can contribute to the world. That valuing the world outside of myself becomes doable and indeed something I want to be part of. Because from that place of self-worth and love, I am strong and capable, and I will work to live in ways which recognize that everything, the people, the rocks, the trees, those toads that I love so deeply, the air we breathe, are all connected. My bridging work, if you will, then, is about this recognition, this knowledge. My faith is likely quite distinct from those on the panel here, and maybe from the audience as well. In the sense I see myself as an animist. I see love and life in everything that's around me. But my guess and my hope is that we share at some foundational level similar aspirations and values, and that the resulting bridging we do in a community, and that I do here from the university with here in Brantford and the various sorts of things that I do as a professor, getting my students out working with various sorts of organizations, leads to the same kinds of socially just outcomes. A stronger, more empowered world where we see the interconnections, the bridges, and we care for all the things around us and ourselves. Thank you. All right.
So Robert was talking about environmental transformation. We should be sitting beside each other because I'm into humanitarian transformation and reaching out to the people around me to make significant change, not only in the health care of marginalized people in my community, but the care of marginalized people in the third world. So it's a really good place to be. I'm a family physician and a mom, and my happy spot for most of my life, most of my adult life, was sitting in my kitchen, playing with my kids, and baking and cooking. And I had a myriad of people that came in and out that we entertained family and friends, and I was enjoying a very normal, wonderful first world life, totally naive to what was going on in the rest of the world. I'm a family physician, but I developed an interest in HIV/AIDS really early on in the pandemic in 1987 when I was a 23-year-old, don't do the math, 23-year-old clinical clerk in medical school and did an elective in infectious diseases at Dalhousie University in Halifax, and was blessed enough to be part of the medical team that prescribed the first dose of AZT to the first HIV-positive patient on the East Coast. And I didn't know that that was part of medical history, but it was the patient that we prescribed the medication to that inspired me. He was HIV positive, he was end-stage HIV, he was gay. At 23, I'd lived such a normal, mainstream life that I didn't even know there were marginalized people. That's how naive I was. And so I could not believe this person's isolation and loneliness. And because I was bottom of the totem pole, and you're kind of despised when you're bottom of the totem pole in medicine, everything gets dumped on you. So I would escape from the medical team and sit with this fellow just so that I could understand what life was like for him. His family had abandoned him, his partner had abandoned him, and even the housekeeping staff wouldn't clean his room, and they would leave his tray sitting outside his room, his food tray. So, of course, that AZT was monotherapy. One drug for HIV doesn't work, so the fellow passed away. But after 3 weeks in Halifax, I came back to McMaster University and tried to learn as much as I could about this disease. And there wasn't very much that we knew at that time. In 1990, I graduated from family medicine, came to Guelph, set up a practice, had babies, delivered about 2,000 babies of my own, took not my own personally, only 3 of my own. Crazy nights. I was so young and naive then, because I would get up and nurse my own child, and then put him or her back to bed, and then race off and deliver somebody else's child, and then work the entire day the next day. There's no way I could do that now. But I took on 7 HIV-positive patients in the 90s, and I called them my group of 7 and loved them dearly. Miss every single one of them. I was privileged enough to take care of them while they died. One was still remaining in 1996 when the antiretroviral cocktail came on the scene, and 3 medications put together allowed for people with HIV to be restored to health within about a month, and they called it the Lazarus effect. And only one of my patients benefited from that treatment. But literally, on this very complicated cocktail, handful of medication 3 times a day, very toxic, very difficult to take, I would watch these patients come back to life, a medical miracle. In 2003, the other treating physicians in the area left, the other HIV treating physicians in the area left. A colleague encouraged me to try to open up an HIV/AIDS clinic in Guelph that would serve this area of the province, southwestern Ontario. And that's when I put the call out to my community. And I could not believe the response that I got. This crazy woman who was trying to do the impossible because there was no funding available. I bought a building and thought, even if they don't give me funding, the Ministry of Health, then I'm going to raise funds and get these people the care that they need. So we were successful within about 15 months, 30 of us, a team of people that got together to do this. We opened up that clinic in 2005, and then in 2006, I listened to Stephen Lewis speak, was broken by his story of HIV/AIDS in Africa, went back to that same community and said, why don't you guys help me raise $1 million for the first HIV/AIDS clinic in Lesotho, Africa? That job was done in 2.5 years. And it was done by selling bracelets. Long story, can't tell that all to you tonight. What I watched was everyone in the community responding, everyone wearing bracelets, everyone from every walk of life, every denomination, understanding that the gap between the rich and the poor and the injustice in the world that led to women and children dying and being abandoned when there wasn't treatment for this disease, there wasn't any way that good people couldn't respond. So I spent time at the first clinic in Lesotho in 2006. I've been there many times since. The $1 million raised by Guelph, the community of Guelph, kept 20,000 people alive at that clinic in the operating year of 2009. The campaign became known as the Bracelet Hope Campaign. We had a wonderful event on December 1st, which is World AIDS Day. We were able to lasso Jian Gomeshi, who is a very sexy dude. Anyway, he was our MC. We filled the largest venue in Guelph. We raised over $100,000 and had $30,000 coming in the week after. I put the call out to my community and said, we need a second clinic and I need $100,000 to do it. And they came up with it within about 2 weeks at the event. So we are now building foster homes in Lesotho. What we're doing is creating relationships, bridges, between the people in Guelph and the people on the front lines in Lesotho. So not a huge charitable organization, no government people, just hand to hand, person to person. We're connecting women's church groups here with women church group there, different corporations with businesses there. We're connecting the medical community in Guelph with the medical community there. And then we're just watching the sparks fly. I will probably do this work till the day I die. I'm a Christian, born-again Christian, although I don't like all the hype that comes with that. I was raised from a Catholic. What I believe in is that if I really want to live my faith, I need to be in the hands and feet of Christ. And that means get out of my comfortable kitchen and into the world and help to transform it. So that's what we try to do.
It's wonderful to hear some of the awesome things that's happening and that you're doing and that everyone's doing. I'm excited to be a part of this panel and to hear the works that's being done here, and really looking forward to the collaboration that is going to take place beyond this. But to let you know, collaboration, building bridges, is part of who we are, what we do, and we have evidence of it with Robert and Mark. We've done a number of things together with, on a personal level with our agencies, and maybe one day we will do something together too. That'd be wonderful. I want to share, before I start sharing about Why Not, I want to share about my own life just very briefly, just to bring you where I am today. I was formed in my mother's womb. Okay, I won't go that far. But prior to July 11, 1983, I was a drug dealer, a drug user, an alcoholic, living a biker's lifestyle, and focused on myself. That was the only important thing to me, was me, what I wanted to do, me, myself, and I. I believed in God, but I didn't know that I could know Him intimately, and that He desired a personal relationship with me. I had spent the previous 4 years asking God this question: if you are really real, then you need to show me. And if there is a purpose to my existence, then I need to know. On the evening of July 11th, 1983, while I was drinking, I said a simple prayer with my wife, Sue, and to the Lord, saying I wanted Him and needed Him in my life. Instantly, I was sober and straight and felt a real warm presence envelop me. I was delivered instantly of drugs and alcohol. In other words, the desire for both were taken away just like that. It doesn't happen that way for everybody, but the Lord knew He had to do that with me. Tears welled up and I cried for a long time, feeling His presence and His love for me. It was a real cleansing that took place in my life. I didn't cry easily. My friends called me Bear. I was tough, or at least that was what I was trying to portray. This outpouring of God's love is what propels and compels me to reach out and love all people. You know, Scripture tells us to love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. It also tells us to love our enemies. Ouch. That's not always easy. I tell people, you don't have to like them. You just have to love them. And there is a difference. Now people call me a teddy bear. Okay, that's not true. They call me Santa Claus. In October of 2002, my wife Sue, say it up, yeah, good morning. The Lord gave her a vision. It spoke to her heart, so it spoke to her spirit, and said, I want you to take, simply said, I want you to take a table, a chair, and a sign that says, need prayer, and go in the street. So that's how Why Not started. Sue went out on the street. She was obedient and faithful to what the Lord spoke to her. About 2 months later, I think there's a little bit of wrestling going on, and a lot of questions as who, what, where, why, and all that kind of stuff. Now, in so saying, the Lord spoke to her. He didn't speak to me, so obviously He didn't want me to go. So I was kind of removed myself very conveniently from that mission. Then about 2 weeks later, I realized I better go with her because I got to protect her, right? I mean, that's my wife. So very good logical reasons for me to go out and join my wife, right? As you can see, sometimes the Lord, I will say this to men, when your wife says something, listen, because we don't always hear too well, and our wives, they tend to be a little bit more, have better hearing ears, especially when it comes to spiritual things. So just a little tidbit. So we did. We took a table, a chair, a sign that says need prayer, and we went and kind of parked in front of the old Odeon Theater, which is now Mohawk Laurier Lecture Hall. This is when it was still boarded up. And all we did was give out coffee and Joe Louis, and then we talked to people. We just invite them to have a coffee, ask them if how it's going, if they wanted prayer for anything. We would just very quietly just pray a few things very unobtrusively, and really blessed. I mean, one time in February, it was Valentine's Day, and we wanted to do something different somehow to bless the women and so on. So Sue called a whole bunch of the funeral homes. They got flowers, and they donated a whole bunch of flowers. And so we took them onto the street and we gave them away. And you gotta realize it's February 14th. It's cold. It's freezing. So by the time we were handing the women flowers, they weren't standing up nice and pretty. They were kind of wilting and stuff. But the women, they so appreciated it. There was a number of them that actually had tears in their eyes and stuff. It was really a wonderful time. We in the spring when we had the power outage here, we decided to bring our barbecue out and do hot dogs. It was dark and everything else, so that's how our barbecue started. So we just giving out hot dogs and still doing all the other things. And then we quickly progressed into taking a tarp out and putting clothes on it, and people would take clothes. It was right in the middle of downtown. It's pretty awesome. After about 6 months or so, the police came and kind of said, you got to move, because we were getting 80 to 90 people on the sidewalk, and it was obstructing a little bit of traffic, pedestrian, and so fair enough. I mean, we fully understood, and so we just relocated at the post office at the loading dock, where I was working at the time. So that went well. Now, one thing we noticed, because we were reaching out to more homeless population, but one thing we noticed, the Victoria Park was just kind of diagonal to us, and there was a lot of youth there, and a lot of youth were coming over for the hot dogs and stuff. So we really started getting a burden for the youth. There was a lot of drugs going on in the park. They were sleeping in there in the summertime. They were sleeping on the benches overnight and so on. And so we really developed a burden for them, and Hence, we started focusing on the youth. We opened our first drop-in in 2004. It was at the Blessing Center, and it was just Thursday nights, and we kind of rejigged all their furniture and stuff and put ours up and made it kind of funky and fun for the youth. And then when that was done, we took it all down again, put all their stuff back. We did that for about 9 months, and then we opened up across the road. We got a building that we assumed a lease of, which also happened to be a restaurant. So we opened up a youth center. We started a restaurant. We didn't know nothing about restaurants, nothing, not a thing. And truth be told, it was a great time. We had over 3 years. We had great food at very, very way too low of a cost. Pricing was way out of whack, and we ended up losing money. So it wasn't our focus. So we kind of after 3 years shut it down. But it was an amazing time of just connecting and communicating with the community. Just recently, I'm going to jump ahead a bit, because just recently we bought our own facility at 368 Colburn, and currently we run 5 youth centers, the one in Brantford, one in Paris, one in St. George, one in Burford, and a satellite project in Simcoe. And we are blessed. We have over 70 volunteers, 40 of which are Laurier students. We got 20 from each kind of semester, and Robert's really great in getting a word out through the CSL students and so on. We can't take anymore because we just don't have enough things for them to do and stuff. But I mean, it is totally run by volunteers. We currently have 1 staff person, Trevor Beecraft, and he works full-time for part-time wages. He will tell you, and he says this a lot, it's a life choice for him and his wife Amy. And he says it's not a job, but a purpose. And last night we heard the speaker talking about, where's your Calcutta? And so I'm just reminded, when she said that, I'm just reminded of Trevor and Amy in that regard. Our mission statement is simple. It's MEET, M-E-E-T, motivate, engage, empower, and teach. Why Not reaches out to at-risk youth. And our assumption is that all youth are at risk. There really doesn't, there's obviously different things that dictate where kids are at and how at risk they are, but all will and can be. That being said, most of the youth come from marginalized and dysfunctional backgrounds. We are all inclusive. We accept all youth, no matter their beliefs, their race, religious beliefs, ethnic background, sexual orientation, or culture. We just don't care. We love kids. We now have 6 former youth that volunteer at the youth center. Becky, who has been with us for 9 years, she was one of our first ones. She was 14 at a time, and now her goal is to one day run Why Not City Missions. And I say, go girl. No, that's Becca. No, I mean, there may be some competition there. And the other one is Crystal. Crystal's here. Say hi, Crystal. Hey. Crystal, who started coming to the youth center about 7 years ago, when she was also 14, is now taking courses to be a personal fitness trainer. She's teaching beatbox dancing to the youth, break dancing, and is the founder and editor of a new magazine for youth by youth called Word on the Streets. The first edition is coming out soon, and
we're getting closer.
Okay,
getting
closer. Speed it up. If I could only use one word to define Why Not, it would be relationships. At the core of who we are, at the core of what we do, it has to be and include relationships. Without that personal relationship with people, you just can't impact and influence lives. And that goes for any age, but obviously for youth. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
Yes.
And lifestyle evangelism, lifestyle of letting ourselves be used by the Lord and just be out there for the Lord is what we're all about. It's love and poured out. In 1908, the Times newspaper asked a number of authors to write on the topic, what's wrong with the world? G.K. Chesterton's answer at that time was the shortest of those submitted. He simply wrote, "Dear sirs, I am. Sincerely yours, G.K. Chesterton." And I believe that there is a tremendous amount of truth to that statement. But I also believe that if that is true, then I also am what is right with the world. We all have a sphere of influence around us. There is a saying that says, "Bloom where you are planted." We all have it within us to accept one another and to help one another. Why Not's tagline is community helping community. It's not just a convenient saying. We really mean it. We have over 40 community partners and around 10 that we work with very closely. We can do so much more together than individually. And one quick story.
Really quick.
2 minutes. See, I'm also a pastor, so...
There's a trap door just below you.
Move over it. You've probably heard this story, but I think it's worth repeating. It's the starfish story. Anybody heard it? Yeah, a number of you have. The old man awoke just before sunrise, as he often did, to walk by the ocean's edge and greet the new day. As he moved through the morning dawn, he focused on a faint, faraway motion. He saw a youth bending and reaching and flailing arms, dancing on the beach, no doubt in celebration of the perfect day soon to begin. As he approached, he realized that the youth was not dancing to the bay, but rather bending to sift through the debris left by the night's tide, stopping now and then to pick up starfish and then standing to heave it back into the sea. He asked the youth the purpose of the effort. "The tide has washed the starfish onto the beach, and they cannot return to the sea by themselves," the youth replied. "When the sun rises, they will die, unless I throw them back into the sea." As the youth explained, the old man surveyed the vast expanse of beach, stretching in both directions beyond eyesight. Starfish littered the shore in numbers beyond calculation. The hopelessness of the youth's plan became clear, and the old man countered, "But there are more starfish on this beach than you could ever save before the sun is up. Surely you cannot expect to make a difference." The youth paused briefly to consider my words, bent to pick up a starfish, and threw it as far as possible. Turning to the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one." And at the heart of what we do, and I believe what we all do here, is one at a time. It's, you can't save the whole world in whatever effort, but one at a time, it makes a difference. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Rick.
I think if you synthesize everything that you've been hearing, what we're really talking about is the fact that you are the I in influence. You are the I in impact, and that's what it's all about. Look at this amazing diversity here. Look at this incredible creativity and what they've been able to do and are doing and will continue to do. For the next 20 minutes, we want to take some time simply to give these folks a chance to dialogue and perhaps even to debate the things that are important to them. Now, look guys, some simple math here. There are 20 minutes available. There are 4 of you. That is what, Charlie? That's 5 minutes of this. Now look, I will moderate and keep things going if I need to, if there's a lull in the conversation, but I just can't imagine with this crew there will be. But Mark, perhaps you'd like to start us off. Is there anything that you heard that resonates with you?
Actually, one of the things that Charlie, I want to pick up on, Charlie had that quote about preaching and sometimes even using words to do so. I worked with Charlie probably once a week for about 3 years before I ever had a conversation with him about religion. And the only reason we had that conversation is I was at Why Not one day, and I said, "So, Charlie, I hear you're a preacher. How'd you come about your sort of religious journey?" So my point being that he's a religious leader in this community, but to a lot of people he's not. He's Charlie who helps people out, and he does it with action. And the fact is that I worked with him in such close quarters with the Roundtable on Poverty, with a lot of different organizations. I was coming to Why Not once a week, and the only time we'd ever talked about religion, I think the only time we talked about religion other than today, was that one day where I stayed a bit late and asked you about it. And he said, "Oh, it's funny you should ask." And I mean, so he has this wealth of interest in religion and service in his faith, but he really is like a drop-in center. in that he's not like an army out recruiting people. He's like a drop-in center waiting for somebody to ask. And I think that's a really
can we debate that?
Proactive way to go. Yeah, sure we can. I just complimented you. I don't know what you would debate me on, but
Well, you blame it on Rick.
yeah. So that's just I wanted to pick up on that.
So what's your message for the community, folks? If you could sort of get to the core of what you really want to accomplish and maybe put all of this experience together, what's this going to look like in the community at large?
Who are you asking us? Let me throw in a thought then. Thanks for this darker story. To me, that's kind of what my work is about, is to take one person at a time and provide some sort of guidance, facilitate it in a way which helps that person gain the same sort of love and joy I get from being with other people and doing this kind of work. I remember back in my early university years thinking, okay, you know what, I want to work for the United Nations, I want to work in Belgium, I want to work at this really grand level, and I will transform the world from that kind of place. I've decided that my best place from doing that work is from my home in Eagle Place. And just by being, first of all, and if it works, a good father, a good brother, a good partner, and a good person in my neighborhood. And it just seems to ripple out. And from that place where I feel deeply confident and good about who I am, it's so much easier for me to go out into the world and do the same sorts of stuff that I want. It's been an incredible, it's almost like rapture, except I've got no connection, at least that I know of, to some sort of Christian ideals, other than maybe some of those are shared values. And I don't like the word debate. That's not what I'm doing up here. I'm sharing ideas.
Yeah.
We'll debate you on the terms.
Yeah, we'll debate you on the terms.
We'll do dialogue.
One of the things that I think becomes important is social work, community development, working with people on a front line. And I have a master's student who's with me right now, and the thing is, she saw her first client today as a counselor, right? So I had to leave the room. She texted me, I'm done, I had my first client, this is amazing. And we started debriefing it. And one of the things that in social work they tell you to do is start where people are at. And I've seen a lot of bridge building that has fallen because you aren't starting where people are at. When I started working at residential homes, I remember there was a child I was working with, a teenager, and I thought of me and my friends at that age, and I was judgmental. I wasn't starting where he was at. And it wasn't until I went on a home visit with him and I saw how his mother lived and how his brother lived and how much progress he had made. And I was judging him based on where I was at, not based on where he was at. And that changed my perspective. And then the other piece around the change is that I'm always telling my students this: change creates crisis, but dealing with crisis creates capacity, right? And that's something I think that we're all doing in ways like what you're doing in Africa. My goodness, I mean, talking about that's 20,000 starfish. I mean, you're doing quite a lot there, but imagine you've gone through your own change, and you had that crisis when you listened to Stephen Lewis, and you had a big life change, and it creates a bit of crisis for you and those around you. But I imagine you and your family, the capacity is incredible.
We had a person once, this is 3 years ago, and they were looking for us for why not to support their initiative to kind of get a big warehouse and to have like a food distribution, clothing distribution, and so on. And wonderful dream, but the problem is that person wanted it immediately, right away, and it got to the point where he got a little tick with us because we weren't helping him get there. And I'm sure he approached and talked to other groups and organizations and that too. And all we told him was, you know what? You got a car? You got a trunk? Put some clothes in it, put some food in it, and start distributing. In other words, going back to what you're saying, use what you have. How do you get to the top of a mountain? One step at a time. There's no quick, up there. Well, maybe a helicopter, but so I mean that's possible. But generally, it's one step at a time, and you grow in that, and change comes, and yeah, it changes out you. But it's good. It's healthy.
My story started in a very similar place you're talking about. Just start with what you have. If you've got a truck, just open it up and get going. When I listened to Stephen Lewis speak, and then decided to try to raise $1 million, which I thought we would do in several months. That's how naive I was. It took a little longer than that. I actually went to the home of a good friend and sat around his dining room table and said, I really need to do this, but I have no idea where to begin. He said, get me a pen and paper and we'll get started. And so we started with just the two of us, and he sort of set the table up at the back of the room and gave out information. And I would talk, and the pastor at my church knew that I'd set this goal, didn't think I was crazy, understood that my faith was big enough to do just that. And so he asked me to come and speak, the first female in my church of 32 years to have the pulpit for the whole hour, right? So they said, take it, you just take it. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, how do I do this? Is it okay? I mean, I'm Roman Catholic by background. A woman would never take a priest's spot, right? So it was lovely that he did that, but the next thing he did was he put an article, an advertisement in the paper, and said, this person's about to speak, this is what she's going to speak on, come to our church and see it. And both services were filled to capacity, and I was overwhelmed. So it was and that was like January 26, 2006. In the next 2.5 years, I spoke probably 200 times, just with this friend, about this passion that I have and this desire to make change in the third world. And we raised probably $400,000 in the first 6 months before my first trip to Africa. So it was literally just get started where you're at, use your gifts, and then exude the passion you have and the love you have for other people in the world.
And also maybe one of the things that Charlie, I think, can speak to as well is be prepared for the dip. Because that's an initial great story. When Charlie and I were on the round table on poverty, and we started a community garden, and within trying for years, and it hadn't worked, and then one day somebody gave us a call, and everything just sort of started going crazy. It was great. We raised $90,000 in kind and in cash and in donations, and we had 250 volunteers, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. This is everything we had. And then nothing else happened for like another year.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to be okay with that dip, because that's how relationships are. That's how life works. You know, you get that first job, and it's wonderful. You get that first grant, you get that first community buy-in, and then it's crickets. And you have to be okay with the crickets and work through the crickets and get to the point where you can have various outcomes and be okay with that, because it's the efforts that's very important.
You know what I've learned? Because the obstacles are huge and the problems are huge, and I could have been destroyed 1,000,000 times over by how tough this has been. But what I've learned is look up, don't look down. Like the pit is going to get deeper as you go through, because there are people who actually don't like it when you do good things, amazingly enough. And there's a target on your back, and there are people who are shooting arrows at you. And I'm a people pleaser. I don't like that. I want to make everybody happy. So what I've learned to do is I don't see the pit anymore. I'm looking up. When I look up, I see a very big God. And he's saying, just keep going in this direction. Keep your eye on me and don't look down. But I also see the goal and realize that nothing is impossible.
All things are possible.
All things are possible.
You know, one of the greatest joys I get, and I think our volunteers and you guys too, and especially if you're teaching and relating to people, is the look in a person, in our case, the youth eyes, when you speak life into them, when you speak hope, when you encourage, when you speak vision and dreams into their lives, their eyes just light up, and they just take it in and soak it in. And so it's a powerful moments that we have, and that's for all ages. I don't think that stops for anybody in that regard. I used to watch Walter Gretzky when he had kids around him, and Walter loved talking about hockey. But man, his eyes would just light up because he had an audience of kids that were just interested, and it was a very funny and wonderful way of telling stories. And the kids, they were just lapping it up. But his were the eyes that I was watching, and they were dancing. He was just so thrilled to be able to share
something or a part of his life.
It's funny you say that, because when I would work with kids at some of the residential homes here, I would take them if they were really down, and don't tell them this if you ever meet them, but what I would do is take them to the King George Road McDonald's for breakfast, because that's where Walter goes. And Walter goes out of his way to go, oh, there's a kid over there, I'm going to go introduce myself. And the kid, one time I remember this one kid, he felt so special. He goes, that old man was great. I said, do you know who that guy is? No idea. But he was just so uplifted by the fact that this person this older guy came up to him and wanted to talk with him and found him exciting. And, and then I told him who he was. He went, oh, I should have got an autograph. And I said, we can come back next week. But yeah, no, that is contagious.
Just in case you didn't know, and Maria, I am sorry, but Walter says that Brantford is the center of the universe. So you know.
I forgot that Walter Rescue was from Brantford, and I was like, oh yeah, he lives here. That's
Everything turns out to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to hear stories from the audience.
We'll get to that.
Oh, we will?
Oh, we will.
Okay.
If you don't say nothing, then you won't have
We're showing solidarity with the audience. I just feel bad for this side of the audience, because all of us are turned this way, and the mics are this way, so hi. Welcome. Yeah, there we go.
To lay the foundation for that, how would you encourage people to get involved? How is it that you can make that start? What I hear you saying is that we all have to use our passion and our giftedness. And I'm wondering what that really looks like if you're just starting out. If you could give people some advice on how to make that happen, what would you say?
One of the first things to say, if you have a dream or a vision, and I think we all do, and to help humanity and to make things better, Nike has a phrase. Just do it. It's not complicated. Don't wait for all your ducks to be in a row and all that. Go out. Do what's in your heart to do, and there will be others that will take note, that will, that will embrace it and walk with you. And Jesus went about, one of the things, the simplicity of him is, it says he went about doing good, and for the most part, as you were saying, for the most part, people like good. A lot of bad people like good. So that in itself, spurs us on. So just do it.
We can't all be Jesus, and we can't all be Superman, and we can't all be those folks, but I know everybody in this room can be more like Columbo. And a lot of people don't get that joke, but the best advice I ever received in this field is to be more like Columbo. And what does that mean? That means ask stupid questions. That means pretend you don't know anything, right? To sit there and Columbo, what's he do? He goes, I don't really understand that. And he does understand it, but he's playing a bit dumb. And then people, guess what they do? They give him information. They teach him what they've done. And he does it in a way where nobody knows. If you come up to somebody and browbeat them, and it's like I said about Charlie, not that he's just like Columbo, but he doesn't recruit. He's not going up to people and being pushy. He's not recruiting like an army thing. He's very much like Columbo, with a ZZ Top beard, ZZ Top. But it is so unassuming, and it is so relaxing for people. People would get interrogated by Columbo, and by the end of it, not even realize what happened. Right, and that's what you need to do. You need to do that with the change makers in your community. You need to do that with people who might be interested. Let people think it's their idea.
But you start at the dining room table.
Yes, you do.
I think, maybe you don't start there, but I think for ordinary people like all of us in the room, that's where we start.
Yeah.
So it's risk taking. You have to be brave enough to tell someone that first time what your crazy dream is. And then when that person gives you positive feedback and says, you know what, I'll help you, then you're encouraged to go and tell everyone you know. I probably drove people nuts for the first few years because it's all I talked about, right? And I encouraged everyone to join me, right? Come on, let's go. And it helped that I could take a lot of them to Africa because everybody loves going to Africa. But it was just starting with one, and it's risk-taking and having the courage to talk about what you dream of.
That's the word that works for me, is risk. This sense that if it feels a little bit uncomfortable,
Go for it.
do it.
embrace that challenge.
And if there's a bit of an edge and you're wondering, oh, well, what will others think of me? So my story is basically, as a faculty member here at Laurier Brantford, is that we were right here downtown. And I thought, what better a place? All sorts of interesting organizations and people doing stuff. I need to get my students out doing this kind of stuff. And I don't think it was legal for me to do it. I think there's liability stuff. We have now very formal community service learning ropes and papers, and we sign things, and it's all a lot more than I'd ever want. I just said, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to go out and do it. And if somebody says, Rob, wait a second, you can't be just, I'm already doing it, it seems to be working. So I've got students out, and for me, I'll say this probably quite honestly, vicariously, I draw great joy from providing for my students an opportunity to step out and work for One Out City Missions, the Art After School program, or Community Living Brand. And they come back just after, maybe it's just 30 or 40 hours, and there's this huge difference in the way that they see themselves. They stepped outside of the protective, comfortable bubble of the university, and got stepped out, even if it's only 10 feet, out into the street, and seeing that there's possibility out there, and their world opens up for them. It's not always transformational, but it's a step out to trying something different in their lives, taking that first bit of risk, with a professor behind them, I guess, maybe that helps them. But boy, what a lot of stuff has transpired in the last 8, 9, 10 years that I've been doing this work, and now I'm kind of following the rules a little more closely. But it was that risk that I took that allowed me to do this kind of work and to meet people like this.
No risk, no reward. I heard somebody say once that you have to go out on a limb because that's where the fruit is. And it really makes sense if you think about it in those terms, doesn't it? Right. Now, we want to make sure that you have a chance to have some really good discussion and dialogue with these very, very talented people. So I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to come forward with your questions. If there's something that's on your heart, on your mind, we want to hear from you. But please, keep your questions short and succinct. 1 or 2 sentences. If there are some students in here, we'd really like to hear from you too, because I think that one of the things we're conscious of is the fact that we want to involve the cross-section. And we have some amazingly talented people, not just here, but out there too. So I'm going to be asking you to think about the questions you have for any of these. So perhaps you could just give us the question, and if there's someone in particular you'd like to lead off with, then please make that known as well.
Good evening, guys. Oh, cool. My voice, that's really loud. Just a quick question. I'm finding a lot that with, especially with my generation and folks and people in my university, there's a lot of apathy towards any sort of social change or social kind of justice. And I just find that I'm just wondering, what are your recommendations on how to get people galvanized towards the movement? I know you guys were talking earlier a bit about this a minute ago, but just how do you get an idea out there, and then how do you get a whole bunch of people to get in a room and say yes to it? I'm just really curious about that.
Anne-Marie, do you want to lead us off?
Short answer, make it sexy. And sexy means different things, right? It's not necessarily a physical sexiness. Yeah, you guys are so out. Part of what happened in my journey was I'm a physician. I'm a science head. At least I didn't think I knew about creating and marketing and branding. But very early on, some very wise people said you need to create something that even the apathetic people, even the people who don't really want to do anything, can't help but join in. And you create a bandwagon effect where it's no longer sexy to not be on that bandwagon. And I don't know how you would go about doing that. It depends on your idea. But for us, it was the Bracelet of Hope that turned things around. This bracelet was made by women in South Africa. And it was University of Guelph students who decided to try to raise 100,000 of our million. And they called University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa and asked if they could put them in touch with crafters. And they founded the Anina Craft Agency, which is a group of poor women who were barely making ends meet, and ordered 5,000 beaded red and white bracelets. Sold them on campus for $5 a piece, raised their 100,000, and when I saw the bracelet, I said, "I'm sorry guys, but can I steal that from you?" And so, as a result of the Bracelet Hope campaign, we keep 100 women. There were 6 women employed, but now we keep 100 women employed. It's just a nice spin-off of the campaign. So in Guelph, the bracelet became sexy.
I think one of the things I would say to do, I've done a lot of youth work. I was part of an organization, I still volunteer for them, called Youth Leadership Camps Canada. And I think one of the really important things to do is give young people ownership. Don't treat them like young people. Treat them, it's on the flyer here, so I'm not giving anything away, but I'm a Brain NDP person, and we recently elected a 17-year-old as a party president locally. We do a youth forum that I co-founded with a 14-year-old at the time, and we're going into our 3rd year. And when I say co-founded, I mean we split the work. I was there to help, and I was there to do my half, but the other person did their half. And now, guess what? I'm not doing as much of it. Other people are youth are. With the brand advocate, oh sure, we'll have youth right. Okay, are we going to have a youth column? No, we're going to have a youth right. Sometimes they'll be page 3, and sometimes they'll be page 12, and sometimes they'll be page 1. It's not about, I think we do a lot of, here kitty, kitty, kitty with the kids, and I don't think that's, when I was a kid, that turned me off. What turned me on, to bring the sexy back, as a young person, was when people said, hey, you want to do this thing? You want to be the youngest person who's done this? Or do you want to just be a young person that's doing
sexy.
this?
See?
Right?
That's sexy. Yeah.
And I was, well, thank you. Okay, well, I can take that.
That's what I mean.
And it's ownership, so it's yours. So at meetings where I'm on a couple of youth advisory type boards, and what I do is I show up for the first 10 minutes, maybe the first 40 minutes, then I leave. I don't just say I'll hang back. I leave. I'm there to answer questions, to be a support, and then I get the heck out of their way. Because they know what they're doing, and they're going to learn, and that's how they learn. And then we debrief, right, when it's done. So there's actual learning that happens from them. And then guess what? Eventually, you're just the person who's turning on the coffee. You're just the person who turns on the lights, signs a form, and turns on the coffee. And that's the goal of real community development. But one of the best days of my community work was the day on the Community Garden Advisory Board where I realized I was in the way. It was about 3 years in, and I went, I'm actually, when I open my mouth, I'm not helping, I'm actually hindering, because this has grown so far beyond me and my friend Jen. And I said, okay, well, we'll see you later. And it was wonderful, and now we have 22 gardens in town. Right?
So giving ownership, making it attractive, any other advice in terms of how to galvanize a new generation? I was thinking maybe you had to have a beard to do anything socially conscious, except Anne-Marie puts the lie to that.
Thank goodness.
Empowerment is huge, and I find with the youth of today, I find less very, on the contrary, not as apathetic as maybe you would think. I find my generation is much more apathetic than the younger generation. That's how I see it. And one of the I believe that what you see is passion. When you're passionate about something, and they see they hear, they see, they feel, they sense that passion, that rubs off. That carries over, because once youth get a hold of something, look out. It's powerful, and so they, the means to accomplish and to do are fantastic and terrific. But going along with Mark's saying, that entitlement, that empowerment, that ownership is very, very huge.
Okay, words to live by. Another question.
Hi, there's been a lot of conversation today about attracting at the grassroots level, and I was wondering about, even if those words weren't used, it seemed like that was a common theme, reaching out to people where they are. I was wondering about making that connection between grassroots activism and grassroots involvement to larger systemic and structural change, and what kind of experience you guys have or strategies.
That's a big one.
I know in our field, like working with youth, we've been asked numerous times, different forums and so on. One of the first questions I ask is, so what are your programs?
what are your programs? And you know, I got to tell them the simplicity of our, I'll say success is our program is the drop-in center. In other words, it's not, it's what we do there, how we interact there. Again, I used the word earlier, relationships. And to us, it's the key. It's the one-on-one. It's being there, spending time. You know, let me ask you a question. How do you spell love?
S-O-U-P.
Okay, that's good. We spell, why not? We spell love T-I-M-E. And kids, and I think anybody, all of us at any age, we want time to spend with somebody, with one another, that one-on-one and so on. And that's what affects change. When you're able to sit down with somebody and actually listen to what they're saying, you know, clinical avenues and approaches have their place, but they'll never replace the relational part. And not all clinical staffing or agencies are in a position to really provide that relational piece that maybe they'd even like to. And most of them, they'll say they got way too many clients or overworked. I mean, Mark could probably share a ton of that. And so when it really comes down to it is spending time, the relational part is so very important.
It's part of what you're asking. How do you take the grassroots work that you're doing and make it bigger, make it cause consistent change?
Yes.
On a bigger, wider level. I think a lot of grassroots organizations don't want to do that. They want to keep working at the same level they're at. And if you've got many grassroots organizations across a province or a country, no one ever calculates how much change they make together. But if we could somehow do that, we would see a tremendous systemic change that's already happened. I'm a little crazy, so my goal is not just to keep raising funds for a couple of clinics in Lesotho, but from what I know about the disease and how easy it now is to treat, and if you treat a person, it's now one pill once a day, soon to be one injection once a month. And when you do that, their viral load, the amount of virus in their blood, becomes undetectable. And research in 2010 shows us that you can't transmit if you're undetectable. So if I grab 300,000 people in Lesotho who are infected with HIV and I test every one and give every one of them one pill once a day, what do we end up doing? We end the AIDS pandemic in one country. That makes huge, huge noise. And I keep telling people that's Millennium Development Goal number 6. There are 8 of them. Canadians don't know them, and that offends me. I think the United Nations made a big mistake by putting these 8 beautiful goals together and telling the world to meet them by 2015 and never involve the ordinary person. Because it's the ordinary person who will take that goal, one of them, and go nuts. And that's where change sparks and the fire goes crazy. But when other countries and other ordinary people see Canadians ending the AIDS pandemic in one country, what do you think is going to happen worldwide? People are going to understand that massive change, like ending poverty, universal primary education for all, gender equality, HIV, AIDS, all of those things can be tackled if we all look up and join efforts that are working on them, and that's huge change at a global level.
So you find those natural allies and you try to understand them and work with them in larger movements. You know, one of the things I think is also helpful is to look at things from a rights-based approach. When I was lucky enough to serve on Canada Low Poverty with people like Joe Clark and Ed Broadbent and Monique Beijing and Ovid Meckredy and a lot of pretty amazing people. And one of the things that we've kind of forgotten to tell a generation of people that there can be sweeping change sometimes. You know, we sign up for, Canada signed up for rights on housing, rights on anti-poverty, and we don't actually fulfill those rights locally, right? Rights of Indigenous people, we don't fulfill them domestically, so how are we going to fulfill them overseas? And one of the things, what a conversation this was, Joe Clark and Ed Broadbent, they're talking with me, I felt like, how did this happen? But one of the things that they both talked about was, we've had basically a couple generations in Canada that haven't seen wide sweeping change. We've not seen one piece of legislation that provides some sort of positive change like the healthcare bill did.
right? And you can kind of see a bit of it in the States, but it's yes and no. And so we don't even know how that works, right? Whereas, way back when the I'm going to screw up the name, but the Widows Fund, when they started saying, hey, just because you're a widow, we're going to guarantee that you are not going to live in poverty. That changed the entire country. When we did the same thing around healthcare, that changed the entire country. When was the last time we had the declaration that education be compulsory? That changed the entire country and the future of the country. When was the last time we saw something like that domestically? 50 years.
If I could just share a quick story. I don't know if anyone knows Bonnie Whitlow. She's the coordinator for Aboriginal House here on the Laurier campus. And about 6 months ago, she was trying to figure out, there were a lot of tensions between us settlers as non-natives and native peoples. And she thought, I'll get people to come in and make soup, and we'll make fry bread. And because there were very few people coming to the little house on Dalhousie Street, which is the Aboriginal Center. And what started with some soup and fry bread and 10 people is now 70 or 80, 100 people every Wednesday from sort of 11 to 2. And it's getting all sorts of people out because soup's attractive. It's good soup, and we all take turns making the soup, and there's usually a couple of people who know how to make good fry bread who are there. And it gets us together. Relationships is kind of the word that seems to work best here. And I don't want you to jump in and get concerned about this example. Idle No More is very much about the use of social media, and it's about getting people together in all sorts of little pockets, in all sorts of places. Think of your own example if you don't like this one. But for me, fundamentally, living in Brantford and understanding something about the context for the Haudenosaunee peoples, whose land has basically been taken from them over the course of the last 200 years, I know I've got some role in my privileged position as a white male, with a really fabulous job as a professor, that I need to take some steps. So it's about going over and having soup, creating relationships with Bonnie Whitlow and some of the elders that she has who come in and speak, so that I can play a role in some small way, which is rippling out, so that I don't know what the outcomes of I don't know more would be, but one of the process is getting us engaged and understanding that there are these kinds of tensions which have been 200-300 years in the making.
But that's where we get back to the rights again, right? And if not just Indigenous folks, but if all folks in this country demanded their rights, well, then we wouldn't have poverty. We would all have equity. If we demanded rights like, should it be a right that if you have AIDS, it should be a right that if you have AIDS, you should be able to get treatment? It should be a right. I don't think anybody here would deny that. The same way, if it was your child, you would demand that right. We have to understand that we're connected and that we need to, I think, again, the grassroots needs to understand the concept of rights. And rights are inalienable, and we need to fight for them, unfortunately, but we do need to fight for them. And I think that's the way to plug into those bigger change agents.
There's a really good book out there called Forces for Good. You reminded me of that. And it talks about 6 things that a grassroots organization needs to have to sustain itself and become very successful. And they use Habitat for Humanity and another charitable organization as their key examples. And one of the things you have to do is become politically active. So it's not enough to just be comfortable in your own community making change, but you have to activate politically to try to make change at a political level. I don't like doing that, so I have someone else do that for me. But we need that person to be challenged and to know exactly what's going on with respect to HIV/AIDS in this country and in the world, and make sure that our name is on every petition, and our name is behind any bill that the government's trying to not pass. That's very important.
So that mingling of rights and responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question.
It's good? Okay. So something that's been brought up over the course of the forum is the idea of finding your Calcutta or finding your mission, which to many people in the room might be Brantford or this area or Africa. But it's definitely noteworthy that finding your Calcutta and following through with it aren't always the same thing. So what elements of your life or your community or do you pull from to be able to follow through with your mission or goal for social justice?
Say it again, what is?
How do you find ways to follow through with your mission whenever it's like you face challenges or you face the crickets, like Mark said, whenever things die down and it doesn't seem like everything's ramping up, like what do you use to follow through with it?
preaches the same thing.
Pray a lot.
All the time. Joshua talks about, one book in the Bible talks about being of great courage. And when you get pushed down, stand back up. And when you get pushed down again, guess what? Stand back up. Be of good courage. Expect to be pushed down. Expect the failures. But always, always, always get back up. And my strength, people call me courageous. I'm terrified. My courage comes from a higher power. And I believe so much in that higher power and the power of God working in us that I just will not stop. Part of it's being Italian.
Yeah. And we talk with our hands.
We talk with our hands.
So passion's there.
I suppose for me, there's something that's transpired in the last couple of years where, because I have a better sense of self, I'm challenging myself in a variety of ways. It's not just about jumping in the Lake Erie on January 1st, which I did was incredibly cold. Anybody's name. But I went down to Lima with an organization called Solidarity in Action last July. And I used to build, before I got into this academic stuff, I built houses up in Inuvik and Yellowknife and so on. And I like to build stuff, physically. And maybe there's some other metaphors in there, but so I went to Lima, to a little shanty town. It's a huge city, 9 million people or something. And we worked in this one little shanty town of about 1,500 people, and all we were doing, really, was the community said they needed, on the little community center which they were building, was a new washroom. So my son went down with me, 15-year-old, and we spent about a week and a half just basically smashing rock, and then digging, and then pouring the foundations, and basically just got the foundations done. It was a huge challenge for me. I loved it, but I know that I need to push myself. So now I'm going down to El Salvador in February to work with Habitat for Humanity. We're going to just spend, I think it's only 4 or 5 days, and we'll build a house. And my hope is that by creating connections with people like Bonnie Whitlow, that I can now start, it's going to be difficult, I know Habitat's having a tough time with it, getting under reserves in Canada. This is the third world I need to work in. I need to push myself to do really challenging work in places which are part of my place, my world. And so it's not El Salvador and Lima. I need to do that stuff here in Canada. And there's lots of places where we have our own third world, and that's where my work is. So it's a challenge for me, pushing myself.
Perseverance, sticking with it, as Anne-Marie alluded to, not giving up. There's a scripture that talks about, when God gives you a vision, He will provide the way to complete it. So for myself as a Christian, I tap into that. And I don't always know what it's going to look like or what it's going to be or anything. And generally, it's kind of, God loves baseball. You got to know that. And God has a tendency of coming out of left field. You know what I mean? And the least, not the way you expect it. And He does that so often. So there's this element of you do everything you can and you go and you inspire and all that, and all of a sudden, what do I do now? I mean, I think we've all been there at different times, and then something is released, something happens, and I would say 99.9% of the time it involves a person or peoples. God uses people, and so somehow there's a connection, there's a timing, or whatever it is, and bam, and you feel this breakthrough, and you keep going and stuff. So perseverance, sticking with it, and keep your gaze, keep your sight on the goal, that which He's given you. Go for it, and don't let nothing stop you.
My answer is very different, and I don't know if that's okay. I like these answers, sure. I really do, but mine isn't about finding Calcutta, mine's about finding Eagle Place. And I'm not comparing the two, for those of you who are from Eagle Place. This isn't the gritty South Side thing that somebody wrote once in an article I got in trouble for. What I mean is by staying grounded. I've been lucky enough to be involved with a lot of programs that, and a lot of children, and a lot of families, and a lot of clients, and places like Bellevue at Community Hub now, or at now Brébeuf, or not Brébeuf, but Jean Vanier, sorry, which is Brébeuf and Fatima combined now. I went to school at Fatima. There's still a photo of me looking like a used car salesman in grade 8 with my cheap suit, which, hey, I kind of look like that now. But what I do is I go back. I often, no matter where I live, I go back to my old neighborhood and I go get out of my car and I walk around. I've been really lucky. I've been able to work with people like Gail Mike, who lives 3 houses down from where I grew up on one side, and Laurier, who lives 3 houses down from where I grew up on another side, and Doug Doolittle, who we do the Kind Man program in Aboriginal Kijé Anishinaabe Nin, which is I'm a kind man, which is about teaching men to be kind instead of calling them abusers and teaching them how to hate themselves. It's about being kinder, and that's a block or 2 blocks from where I grew up, and I've been able to do things in Woodland where we used to play baseball and we used to like park and make out with our girlfriends and all that stuff. What I'm able to do in that neighborhood has actually kept me really grounded. So when it gets a little nuts and it gets a little heady, I go back to Eagle Place and I walk around, and I remember talking to a young client and talking about some of the programs there that I'd either been involved with or knew about, and said, I would have killed for something like this 2 blocks from where I grew up. And I went, oh, that's why I'm doing this. Because when I was a kid, I would have killed for something like that. Because back when I was a kid, you could deliver the paper and go rent a video game at the video garage, and that was kind of it. And try to get in before some bigger kid might beat you up. And now I see the vibrancy in that community, and so for me, it's not about looking forward as much as it is going back to the ground, going back to where, and it's been great. I grew up in a slum as well, in Sudbury, 4 Corners, Rumble Terrace. And every time I go to Sudbury, I go visit there again too, and I see that, and I bring people there. And for me, that's the stuff that, you're all just trying to take care of the little kid we used to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Yeah.
We're talking about justice, and what I'm hearing is that it's not just us. So we need to build bridges, whether it's to God or to the people around us. We start where we are. Lots of good, practical, relevant advice there. Another question?
Yes. We talk about the grassroots movement because, of course, sometimes it's just easier to get things going with a grassroots movement. The government has had several commissions on...
Sorry, you look like an angel because the light is... Can you stand up? We can't see you.
Sure. The light's just...
There we go.
Oh, there you are. There he is.
The government, the federal government has had several commissions on poverty, and of course, it's never been reflected in any of their legislation. But is there still a possibility of collaboration with government, provincial government, federal government, in order to enact legislation? Because we can see already the disparity between the poor and the rich, the fact that money given out for welfare and for disability has not increased, and yet the cost of living has increased dramatically. So coming from people who've worked at the grassroots, who've kind of done things without government, is there still hope to collaborate with the government?
I think there is. I'm just going to jump in here. With the Canada Without Poverty, that's what it was all about, was trying to find ways to hop through the partisanship by having a Joe Clark, with an Ed Broadbent, with a Monique Beijing, who was Trudeau's health minister, with Elizabeth May, with Jean Crowder, with Michael Chong, trying to get that cross-party support for something like the Poverty Elimination Act. And I was happy to be able to help actually take part in the creation of that act. And it came very close to getting passed, and we had an election. But it will come back. But that said, it doesn't matter if we enact that sort of legislation. We've signed on all the Anti-Poverty Bill of Rights. We have to actually enforce it. We have to command it. And we unfortunately I think we live in a bit of a system where we focus so much on building a better food bank instead of lessening the need for a food bank. And that's no knock on the food bank. I love the food bank. But the point being that I think we need a bit more of a paradigm shift. And thank goodness faith-based communities are there to pick up the slack where the rest of us have stepped away.
I think if you want the political will, you're talking about the political will to follow through on some of these social justice issues. Right now, charitable organizations fill in that huge gap between what exists and what should exist. To do that, make it even sexier. What I mean is, you have to be so loud and so in the face of the press and the people in your community, and just make such a big splash that politicians want to jump on the bandwagon because it's going to get them votes. What we're missing are enough people who are willing to commit their lives to causes and to sacrifice their time to make the noises loud enough. The wrong things get the right press all the time, and there's a lot of really good work being done on so many levels, but it doesn't make the front page. And I think that's in part what really needs to change. I've got the Guelph Mercury in my hip pocket. I would never have been able to do this without them. I write an article once a month, and they publish it once a month. So they're hugely responsible for the success of the Guelph campaign.
Make a splash, lots of ripples. That's the way it goes. Anything else on that? Next question.
Mine's fairly simplistic compared
Thank
to
you.
other ones. Dr. Henry, I'm from Fergus. I've been in Fergus my entire life. I'm just wondering, and for all of you as well, how can we get involved with helping yours and other organizations out? Because I'm very interested.
Yeah, we have key people in Fergus. Wilfrid Waterloo has been involved. And just call Brace of Hope and we'll get you in. There was a very active Waterloo campaign about 3 years ago, and they raised a significant amount of our $1 million as well. So we are not adverse to as many communities as possible getting involved.
You say you're from Fergus, but you're here?
Yeah, I commute here for the weeks. Well, I live down here for the weeks, and I commute home for my weekends. But I'm home at my home church.
So 10 o'clock tomorrow morning at the Grand River Community Health Center, there's a community food systems meeting. It's about trying to create better access and security to food here in this local community. If you want to come out to it.
347 Colburn, I haven't worked there, it's pretty awesome.
What was it, sorry?
Just a couple blocks down past Clarence on Colburn Street, the Grand River Community Health Center.
How does it look like?
It used to be the old
Ford
Mercury Ford place.
It's
Alfred and
it says it on it.
It looks like a tuna can.
On the corner of Alfred and...
Yeah, it's kind of gray metal. 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock when? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning. Sarah Gill with us.
One of the things I'll text her, she'll love it, she'll think it's great. One of the things, I'm not being on my phone to be rude, but this is how you do it. I got this message today at 1 o'clock from a Laurier Brantford student. I'm going to not put her name in here, but literally, "Hi Mark, my name is such and such, and I'm a student at Laurier Brantford." She just put this in my Facebook message box. I'd never met her before. I'm in a class called Applied Democracy, and a large portion of our mark is to join the social movement. I've been researching social movements in Brantford. Your name popped up on my search a few times. I know this is sort of a shot in the dark, but I was wondering if you knew of any social movements I could get involved with. I'm willing to come out to meetings, that's a plus. Let's see, and learn about what is going on. Anyways, hope all is well, and if you take the time to message me back, that would be really awesome. Thanks again, such and such Laurier student.
And you responded right away.
And I responded at 1:07, saying, "Hi, I'm involved with a few, and here are a couple of different ones. What's your interest?" Right, and always finding that interest. So ask people that, well, you're doing it, so you're doing the right thing. But go, yeah, I know that is what you're asking. I'm not trying to, but what I'm saying though is go connect with people. That's one of the beauties of social media is you connect with people in a way. I get a message like that almost every day from somebody.
And every single person that asks to be involved and gets involved is so vitally important. Yeah. Every single one. So that's why I knew you answered at 1:06.
And one of the things I don't do is put them towards my pet projects. I say, "So what are you interested in?" Right? And then they give me a list as well. And that's so important. So what are you interested in? I'm going to put the question back to you, now that you've given the mic away.
Oh, that's fine. You can hear me from there anyway. I'm in Con Ed, in current education. Do you want me to take it again? Yeah. Okay.
We can hear you pretty well.
Yeah, they can hear me. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll say it again. I'm in concurrent education here at Laurier Brantford. It's the most amazing program I've ever found in my life, given that I wanted to be a speech pathologist when I was in high school. Teaching was kind of the last on my list. But I actually go down to Bahamas every summer with my roommate, and we're teaching Haitian children there because they're Haitian, they're assumed to be dumb, and the teachers ignore them. And so they end up behind in school. So I had a little 12-year-old girl, and she's still in grade 1 because
she gets ignored in the classroom, and she doesn't have parents right now because they got sent away to Haiti because they're illegals. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, from your motivation, like, how can I help them down there as well? Because a lot of what I'm hoping to do after I graduate is work down there. I actually want to set up a tutoring program where we coach the older children with, like, along with my roommate, where we coach the older children on how to teach the younger ones, so that at least if the older children are schooled enough, they can get the younger ones through school as well. And because quite literally, if they don't graduate school, their options are either hard labor if they're a boy, or it's prostitution if they're a girl. That's their options.
So one of the things based on your interest that I would suggest that you could do next week if you wanted was Immigrant Settlement Services in town does conversation clinics for newly arrived Canadians. And I mean, that's a way to teach a group of people who will then teach other people, and you can see some of that process, because it sounds like you're going to do what you want to do with Haiti and getting there, but you're going to have that time in between. So why not work in being the best possible, most experienced possible for that role before you get there?
I don't think you need any advice. Sounds like you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. Go, girl. Yeah, way to go.
I got a question. I'm a Christian. Jesus said, so in everything you do, do to others what you would have them do to you. It's known as the golden rule. We're all familiar with it. That rule is not exclusive to Christianity. It actually goes back thousands of years. Every religion teaches it. From my understanding, when Jesus said it, he said it with the knowledge and with the intent that not every single one of us keeps that law. We break it consistently. And the purpose of Christianity is to show us that we actually do not help our neighbor. We're actually all selfish. So when it comes to human nature in the world that I live in, I see human nature as evil, essentially, and selfish. So when it comes to our work in social justice, I do believe that when we say going out and spreading the gospel in terms of our deeds, I believe that captures about half of it, because my understanding as well is that humans are eternal, and there is an ultimate destination for every single person. And the Bible says that we know the names of those two places, ultimately heaven or hell, and half of the battle is going out and doing and showing the love of God, but also the other half is the salvation aspect of saving them, winning them over to Christ, to heaven. So essentially my question is this, I'm interested to hear what our Amos buddy says, is our social justice essentially meaningless unless done with the exclusive salvation message of Christianity?
No. On a personal level, I would say yes, because that's what my beliefs tell me. So to me it is very important that I am able to present the gospel message, present the salvation message, in my case to youth, but at the same time it's not pushing, it's not shoving, or I mean, God, the beauty of God is, and this is one of the reasons I love him so much, is he gives us a free choice, a free will. And to me, that's one of the tremendous ways of him showing us how much he loves his creation, his people, and allowing that. And any other God that I know of wouldn't let you do that, you know. So in so saying, in the way we approach it is, we have, when kids ask, when Mark asked, when he opened the door to talk about it, then we talk about it. We speak in our brochure just about one of the aspects that we bring to the youth is a spiritual aspect. But we wait for the right timing of that, and like I say, usually it's one-on-one stuff. Usually when they're going through stuff, and you know, when I tell a kid, you know, there's somebody that loves you more than anybody loves you, and that's Father God. God loves you more than he does anybody else. He went on the cross, Jesus went on the cross just for you, nobody else, just you. And when they take that into their spirit, that moves them, and they get tears and all that. And so because it touches something within them that is kind of dormant or hasn't been shaken or whatever. And those times are, it doesn't happen every day or anything like that, but there are precious moments when when that happens. And in all honesty, to me, that is the greatest. I get excited. I get excited because now I'm able to speak into the spirit, the essence of who they are. The Bible teaches us that we are made in the image of God. And so God is spirit, and we are spirit. And so that which lives forever, if you believe in heaven and hell, is our spirit. And as we know, when we die, our bodies are rotten. They're not all, the flesh decays, and all that's left is the bones. So what's left? It's our spirit. And so it's amazing, the times where I'm able to speak into a young person's life that way, and you just feel that moment, and it's a window. It's just a little window sometimes. That all of a sudden you're speaking into something or touching something that's never been touched before. And then you kind of, you just step back and let God do his work in him or her and stuff. So I'll be very blunt and honest with you, I am very selfish. My main motivation is because of my beliefs is that people come to the Lord. But I also realize that they have a choice. It has nothing to do with me in that sense. So they have a choice, and they choose whatever they want. And I respect their choice because it is their choice. So I don't know if that helps answer it, but...
I'll give you the other side of the coin. I agree with that, but I'm not an evangelist. And I was specifically told by God, I believe in that, I do, not to make Bracelet Hope a faith-based organization, but to make it secular and open it up to everyone. And I've received a lot of criticism for that, mainly from the faith-based people. And I would say, if you look at the people who are working earnestly on the campaign, most have a faith, but they don't necessarily live it out. And I hear stories all the time of people who do come to faith because they're watching people of faith do social justice work. And our work is successful so far because God is doing it. I can't evangelize, it's not my gift. And my goal is to reduce suffering. I'm a physician. My goal is not to save people. I'll let God and the Holy Spirit do that. But my goal is to reduce suffering in a world where there is a tremendous amount of it.
I like the idea of service, right? And not just service to Creator, God, whatever word people use in their various faiths, but to each other, to the earth. I look at, I'd like you to, it sounds like you read a lot about a lot of religions, and I'd like you to read the 7 grandfather teachings, right? I'd love you to talk with my friend Barry Pridham, who I think knows more about many religions than most people know about one. What a guy he is to look at the knowledge in different faiths, and why would you throw that away? One of the reasons Rev Mass became my Rev is a story he told me about seeing his role in service to be that if somebody came to him from a community and said, I'm an atheist, then his job would be to make them the best atheist they could be. Right? And I think, wow, what a way to actually live a value. And it's a value of trying to serve other people and help them in their goals. Frankly, I know a lot of people who aren't religious, who don't have a faith-based model that they go on, who are amazing people, right? And I would hate to cut them out of something based on, hey, you're not on my team. I know that's not exactly what you're saying, but it's something that I think people could interpret the wrong way. So there's just so much knowledge out there, and I love Rev Mass's point of view about that, and that's my job, because that's what they came to me asking for. And I guess in social work, as an MSW, this is something that we look at a lot, which is the doctor called you into my office and they want you to talk about A, B, and C, but what you want to work on is X, Y, and Z. My job is to work on X, Y, and Z with you.
Someone once said that service is faith in work clothes, and I think all of us could probably get behind that. Another question. Time to wrap up? Okay. Now, my understanding is...
Look at the beard. Looks like he's really got something he wants to
I just have one question.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be quick, dude.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to get that thoughts. What does a just society look like? Because sometimes I feel like when we're working towards justice, we're putting together a puzzle without looking at the box. You know, so in your mind, if you're saying we're working toward a just society, for you, what does that look like? What goal? What's that target that you're aiming toward?
I have a very quick answer as well. Life is other people, and a just society would be one where everybody understands that.
There's a verse in the Bible that says to prefer one another. It's a powerful verse, and if we live that way, love your neighbor as yourself, if we really believe that and live it out, we get along. We get along, and it has nothing to do with forcing anybody's beliefs on anybody. You know, we can get along.
For me, it's very simple. They got this image of people having access to fresh water, to shelter, and to nutritious food. How we get there, of course, is part of that social justice process. But that's my image.
Did you listen when I spoke at your church? Did you look at the slide where I put down the 8 Millennium Development Goals? That is a just society. So the world knows what a just society is. Yeah. The United Nations, world leaders, everybody knows what a just society is. Are we courageous enough, strong enough, bold enough to actually make sure a just society happens?
Well said. I understand we're going to have an opportunity for small breakout sessions if there are people who would like to do that in room 214. So if you are in the mood to have a little bit more dialogue and discussion, then that is available to you. And if not, well, we'll still have had a wonderful time. Yeah. You know, one thing to close on for me, and maybe this says more about me than it does about these wonderful people, but I think it would be easy for all of us to be intimidated by the incredible talent that we see right here. We all want to change the world. We all want to change the world. And I think sometimes we're cheated out of that because we want to do something big and bold and dramatic. We want to give God $1 million. Here, let's just do this. Let me do something big. And what I'm hearing from every one of you over and over tonight is God and the people around you need you to take that $1 million, change it into quarters, and give them out one at a time. So may we all be blessed as we try to do that. And thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
For more information about the Veritas Forum, including additional recordings and a calendar of upcoming events, please visit our website at veritas.org.